So, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. So just before we get started, I would like to really welcome everybody to this second webinar that we're hosting on our Building Resilience in Forage and Livestock Systems series. So today, actually first, this is a collaborative effort between Clemson University and the USDA Southeast Climate Hub. And this series aims to address practical strategies and resources for enhancing the resilience of forage and livestock systems under extreme weather conditions. So in this second webinar, we will be focusing on enhancing forage resilience under extreme weather conditions. So today we will be joined by two speakers addressing both planning ahead and also the aftermath of extreme events. But before we get started, I'll just talk about a few housekeeping rules. So we'll ask you to please keep your mic muted at all times so it does not interfere with the guest speaker's presentation. We will have time for questions at the end of each presentation, so please save your questions for the designated time later. This presentation and also all the other presentations are recorded, and the links will be shared and made available for all the participants, everybody that registered for the webinars. And also, if any of the speakers share any additional resources, we will also make those available and share those links later as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So our first speaker today is actually myself. My name is Liliane Silva. I graduated with my bachelor's in agronomy and my master's degree in animal sciences from the University of São Paulo, and then a PhD degree from the University of Florida. Currently, I am an assistant professor and extension specialist at Clemson University. So today I'll be speaking about enhancing resilience. Let me actually share my presentation here so everybody can see it. Can anybody just confirm that you can see my presentation? Thank you so much, Bruno. So I'll be talking about enhancing forage livestock operations, sustainability, and resilience against extreme weather events. So just 1 second here, having some issues. Okay, perfect. So when we are thinking about sustainability in livestock systems, we need to understand that sustainability encompasses social, economic, and environmental aspects in operations. And some of the major issues that we usually refer to or hear about are usually related with greenhouse gases, emissions, land and water use and quality, resource use efficiency, and land conservation. But we do need to be thinking about being able to mitigate negative environmental contributions while also optimizing positive contributions, because this is what is going to really help the systems to have a long-term viability, especially in the industry that we're in, to make sure that the systems have a proper resilience against several factors, economical and other factors as well. So for us to be able to get to this point, just definitely requires us to develop adequate technical solutions and viable socioeconomic drivers as well to encourage the adoption of those solutions, those practices that we're developing through research by producers for them to be able to intensify their production, their operations in a sustainable way. So before we get started talking more about the practices, I just wanted to bring up these slides. And you can plug in any specific year that you'd like here. I just put 2075 because it's just a number here that we could have a reference 50 years down the road, what to expect for. But when we start looking on the predictions and scenarios that we have available currently, we see that it is expected for us to see an increase in temperatures worldwide, and this will probably be moving the production areas, the areas where some crops grow, to different regions. And we also see that there's expected increase in the occurrence of extreme weather events. And when we're talking about extreme weather events here, we may be referring to prolonged droughts or to high intensity short-term rainfall, or even other events that would have some impact on the production and the persistence as well of agricultural systems. So in recent years, we have seen several extreme events happening. Sometimes in 24 or 48 hours, we have seen some large amounts of rain coming through, usually associated with hurricanes, for example. This picture on the side here, on the right side here, it's from my experimental study in Citra, Florida, which is kind of like the central area in Florida. In September of 2017, we had about 10 inches of rain coming through in about 12 hours, a little more than that. So the pastures that I was using for my experiment are what you're seeing here. They actually end up covered with water, and that water never actually went away from there. Even nowadays, they still have the water there because it changed the water table around that area. So this definitely compromises study, research, but this is something that we have seen with other areas in producers, farms, etc. So this is just an example. And when we start thinking about what we will be needing to do, definitely what we're going to be doing in terms of management will be important for us. And its management will definitely be a key that we need to be working on, because it's going to be the way that we can adjust some of the resilience, some of the health of the stands, the soil health. So several aspects that will be contributing to improve the production, the forage distribution, nutritive value, and persistence as well. So when we start thinking about what we would need to do and to think about in terms of enhancing the resilience of our systems against extreme weather events, something that any farmer is already doing is monitoring weather conditions, because this is definitely required for us to do. But also, this will definitely become more and more important when we start thinking about trying to anticipate some decisions in terms of when we see some extreme events potentially happening. So it's definitely going to be something to keep doing and improve what we have been doing as well. So like I said before, when we're referring to extreme weather events, we may be talking about drought, excessive rain, or even winter weather extreme events. So I'll just give some examples here of some of the impacts that those can have. And also, these pictures here are actually from the research station that I'm located at in Blackville. And this is just an example. For us on the Southeast region, we usually have mild winters. And this last year, we definitely had a different type of winter with a lot of snow accumulating in some parts of the region. And even for us here, we had two large events of about 4 inches of snow accumulating in the areas. And we end up having some issues, some injury to the crop, some reduction of production, some impacts that we saw related to that. in our winter grazing, winter plots that we usually have. So like I said before, each one of those different types of extreme events can have different impacts. So when we're talking about drought, usually we're going to see some impacts on germination. It could stunt the growth, have some losses of overall production. Then rainfall, excessive rainfall will definitely, one of the largest issues will be the waterlogging, especially on perennial fields, because then we can have some fields even declining, or depending on how much water we're talking about, you could have larger issues. And Dr. Pedreira has firsthand experience on that because he's in Tennessee. So he's definitely going to be able to talk with us a little more about that later as well. And then, like I said, winter weather issues will definitely be associated with winter kill, some losses of production or even germination or growth just because of the cold weather that we're experiencing. And some of the species that we use are tolerant to colder weather, but some of them may not be necessarily tolerant enough to some extreme events. Then when we start talking about some strategies that we could implement, especially on the research side, we have been focusing on trying to understand better some environmental aspects, and especially what related to enhancing the health of the system, the production, the sustainability over the past decades. And we have we understand that we need to have a more holistic approach when we're trying to work with climate resilient strategies. And when I say holistic, is because we need to think about plant, animal, soil, environmental aspects, even human factors as well, and all their interrelationships. So when I talk about some of the examples moving forward, those definitely will be associated with several benefits, environmental benefits especially. So one of the major strategies that we can use to enhance climate resilience is the use of forage mixtures. We still have most of our systems relying on monoculture or binary combinations of forages still, but we can be adding some different plant species like legumes or brassicas, for example. And these pictures here show some of the examples of mixtures for the cool season. And legumes have several benefits because they are able to fix nitrogen. So we're going to be having some input of organic nitrogen into the system. That's going to be enhancing the nutrient cycling, the soil fertility, soil health, also contributing to organic matter deposition, carbon sequestration. Will also help with the animal performance, and also with reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, because we're going to be improving the quality of the diet that the animals are consuming. And also, it will be, when we have mixtures, we're able to mix different species that will be improving the distribution of forages, and also we're able to balance that diet throughout a season based on the species that we're mixing as well. Something that it's also beneficial is the use of brassicas. They have a quick growth, they have high nutritive value, and they are able to also help us to assess nutrients that may be deeper in the soil profile, because their tap roots are going to deeper in the soil, so they are able to recycle, scavenge for some of those nutrients that are on the deeper layers as well. So those are definitely positive ways to use mixtures. And then I have some pictures here just with some examples of mixtures that you can see what's there, but they're definitely going to be helping us to improve the forage production, and that can, especially on the winter side, for example, for us in the Southeast, that's definitely going to help to balance out the costs of having to feed the animals during that period of time, and cost of dry matter production. So there are several ways that we can benefit from them. And just to give you an idea of some production, so these treatments here are just summer annual species mixed. So first of them are just grasses. Then the second one, we have grasses with 3 legumes. The third one, we have grasses with 2 legumes and brassica, which is radish. This is just just to give a general idea to you what we would be seeing in terms of annual yields for them. And you can see that the mixtures definitely have more biomass produced above ground, but also something that's very interesting is that we start seeing some more production of roots as well. So we also saw larger amounts on the below ground of biomass produced, which is going to be a really good source of nutrients for that system overall, because that material will be decomposing over time and releasing nutrients there. Then just moving forward for another example of climate resilient strategy is something that's not new, but it has been gaining more and more interest over the past years, which is integrated crop livestock systems, basically grazing cover crops. So land use is something that we're trying to enhance over the years because we have limited agricultural area for expansion. And then we can be using areas where we would be producing row crops to plant cover crops and then be able to bring animals, livestock to graze that, which helps to reduce the weed pressure on those areas, helps with soil conservation, reduce leaching and runoff, improve nutrient cycle, and also can diversify income for producers as well. This is a setup that Dr. Dubé has in Florida, that he is studying some options for different rotations of row crops with cover crops and even with bahia grass. So the results that we're seeing from that side are really nice, and we're definitely seeing the benefits of having those species, those integrated systems overall, as I explained before. Another example that we have is the use of silvopasture. So silvopasture is a system that integrates 3 forages and livestock in a single ecosystem. And we usually see a reduction of forage production because the forage will just be on the alleys on those systems. But overall, we end up having a better land use just because we're able to have to diversify the income for the producers. We're able to offer shade for the animals, so it increases welfare, and they will be able to put more weight. And we also have several environmental benefits associated with these systems, which includes water infiltration. We can provide wildlife habitat. We also work really well with carbon sequestration on those systems, and several other benefits as well. And for us, especially in the South, heat stress is something that we see often on the livestock. So we will need to work somehow to provide them shade. And when we have silvopastures, we definitely are able to create a microclimate and to cope with some of the issues that we would usually see for performance, and also that could even impact reproductive responses of those animals because of the heat stress that they are going through, especially in July and August. So this is something that's really interesting because, like I said, we will need to work some way to provide shade for the animals. So usually when you look at portable shades from some of the companies, you can get quotes that go from $15,000 to even $30,000 or more for some type of shades. You can still build yourself some shade structures, and maybe for $5,000 or so. But still, it's going to be something that it will need to be in the pasture somehow and available for the animals. And for this reason, we definitely need to understand that silvopasture is an option, but it's also going to be something that's a long-term investment because the trees will take several years to grow. So that shade will become available eventually. And if this is something that you would be interested in implementing, you need to be planning ahead of time as well for that to be an option for you. Then some other points that we need to think about that relate to sustainability and to resilience as well is water availability and quality, because extreme weather events may also impact our access to water and also to the quality of the water that we have. So definitely the conservation efforts that we can make to enhance the quality and to really conserve the quality of the water sources that we have are important. And some of those points that we need to be thinking about is definitely to reduce leaching, runoff, and even soil erosion to water bodies, because those are definitely going to be sources that will compromise the quality of the water resources that we may have. But also limiting livestock access to water bodies, that's definitely important as well. And then, so this is definitely one of the points that probably most people have heard or even discussed some of these over the past years. Greenhouse gas emissions are something that has been under scrutiny and pressure for livestock and forage systems over the past years, due to the environmental impacts that they have. Oftentimes, we're going to hear about methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide. And then we need to understand the sources, where they come from in the systems when we start looking at the systems, even if it's just livestock or if it's livestock with forages as well. We have several strategies that we can use to decrease greenhouse gas emissions, but those will definitely depend on the type of production system that you have, the forage species, the management, and we still don't have a lot of what I'm calling here real world estimates that we're taking from grazing systems because of the limitations that we have to collect that data, because it requires a lot of personnel and equipment and also larger time frames. But there are several groups that are working on this, us here in Clemson being one of those groups. And we are collecting these pictures we're taking from some sites that we're using here. So we're taking measurements on soil and on the animal as well, to try to have some of that better estimates for the real emissions that we have from forage and livestock systems. And then when we're talking about sustainability, one of the really important adjustments that we can make is to try to improve nutrient cycling. And one of the things that we see a really good benefits, the use of rotational management, because we can then both improve the forage stand health, because we're going to be able to harvest that forage more timely, but also we're going to be redistributing the nutrients on that area more uniformly as well. So this is definitely going to be something that we're going to be working on improving and reusing the resources on that area, and really this is positive for the system overall. But this also helps to have better levels of nutrients in the soil, and will be supporting carbon accumulation, which is something that we have been seeing more and more the importance and also the interest on this. And something that we start talking about in the recent years is carbon credits and carbon markets for these systems as well, not just for the row crops. So this is definitely something that we are trying to generate more data, more information, understanding better how organic matter is formed and how the carbon is accumulated and staying in the soil, just to be able to provide more information to how carbon markets and how carbon credits could work for forage and livestock systems as well. But something that I always like to say when we're addressing this topic is that we definitely need to have an emergency plan. Even if you try to implement all the strategies that I just discussed about, it's still important to be able to have an emergency plan that could work for you. So this is because we may still have some challenges that would be something that you would need to figure out how to deal with that eventually. So it's going to be important to also plan for that. Before I wrap up this presentation, I just want to share this slide because we have several extension agents. We have a lot of people working with producers directly here, and also with producers that may be working with other producers as well. And I think that the work that we will be doing and trying to bridge this gap between what's been generating on research and how producers can implement those practices, what makes sense for them, this is definitely going to be something very important over the next years. And we will definitely need to make sure that we have resources in different formats that can reach wider audiences, and also even trying to involve more of the youth, because there's a lot of people that may not be necessarily working in the agricultural side or know a lot about agriculture when they are younger. And then this would be something that could bring them to be involved with the industry. And we do need to remember that any solutions, any practices that we would be sharing with producers, they must be practical, scalable, and financially sound for them to be able to adopt. So when we're looking at developing these practices in the research side, we do discuss the economical side. We think about that because that needs to be something that's feasible for them as well. So just to wrap up, definitely we need to understand that there's an increased likelihood of extreme events happening. So we need to be on top of the management and the planning that we can do for our operations. And any extreme event will have some impacts on the production and sometimes even compromise some of the season's production. And we do need to understand the importance of implementing improved management practices that support persistence and health to be able to cope with the aftermath of some of those losses of production or reduced harvests or some other issues that may arise as well. So with that, I'll just share my contact information here and I'll wrap up. And we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation that Dr. Pedreira will do now. So Dr. Pedreira, if you'd like to share your presentation now, I will introduce, I'll make the introduction to you in a second.
Perfect.
So now we are going to have our second speaker here with us today is Dr. Bruno Pedreira. Dr. Pedreira graduated with his bachelor's in agronomy from the University of Federal of Lavras and an MS and a PhD degree from the University of São Paulo. Currently, Dr. Pedreira is an associate professor and the director of the University of Tennessee Beef and Forage Center. Dr. Pedreira, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Liliane, for the opportunity to be here and talk with everyone. I'm glad we have here, how many, 80 plus, almost 90 people join us today. It's It's always a pleasure to join you guys and be able to talk a little bit about forage in this context, right? I think that's the challenge here for us is how can we deal with this changing environment that we have been discussing here? It's kind of interesting to talk about the things that have been changing, and based on the data we have, it seems that things are changing and they will be changing for the next few years. I like all of us to start to talk about this, saying that regardless of what you believe, what we learn is we'll have kind of different weathers. The weather is going to be different every once in a while, and we'll need to handle it, right? As Dr. Silva mentioned, I moved here to Tennessee to, took this position as director of the Beef and Forage Center as a forage specialist 2 years ago. And I want to start this conversation with you guys just telling you what I found here when I arrived, right? So this is my US drought monitor for the fall of 2023. So I was here for a month and a half, 2 months, and I start to got these calls that, how do we deal with this? It is time to stockpile fescue. How can we stockpile fescue if we don't have moisture? It was August. So then we got into September, so we were like, well, that's time to renovate our pasture. That's time to start to plant again. There is no soil moisture. And we didn't make through, right? If the place that we tried to replant and renovate the areas and hayfields or pastures, we didn't make it. And then we said, okay, let's go to 2024. Maybe next year is going to be a little bit better. And then we got again into another August, September, and November that it was mostly dry. And not only in Tennessee, right? I'm showing you the Tennessee maps because that's what I do for a living every day. But it was basically the reality for most of the Southeast US. We didn't have good falls in the last 2 years. So this year we have the hope that this fall is going to be better. The forecast now looks better than it was 2 years ago in the last two falls. But my point for this presentation is we are going to go through these things. We are going to have to understand that it's going to happen. And if it does happen, how do we handle this? I think that's my main goal with you guys for the next 25 minutes. What I would like to do is to go through stand evaluation. I need to understand what I have in the field. And then we'll talk a little bit about soil test. We'll talk a little bit about seed overall quality, rate, depth. And then I will wrap up this presentation, talk with you guys a little bit about renovation scenarios. How do you handle them, and what would be the best way to do it if you have to deal with a pasture that failed last year for some reason. So the first step to me is stand evaluation, right? And I like to tell you guys that you cannot drive it through. You cannot have your side-by-side and just go there and drive around. You got to get out of it. Look from the top. I want to have this overview picture of the pasture. And you got to have the feeling that what is the amount of the desirable forage you will still have there. Regardless, if you're talking about Bermuda, Bahia, if you are in the south, if you're coming northern a little bit, if you have more like fescue, orchard grass, I want you to walk through that pasture and make sure that we have good cover, right? When I call good cover is, the question would be, do you have at least 2/3 of that pasture in a good scenario, right? Yes, I have the feeling I'm walking through here, say, yes, 70% of this pasture is still with the forage I'm looking for. So that will be my pasture number one, good ones. My second set of pastures, and I like to split them in 3 big groups. My second group would be the pastures that are kind of halfway, right, in between. They are from 40 to 65, 70%. We still have some weeds, bare ground here and there. And you now start to divide your pastures, and the good ones, they'll know that the ones that I need to take care of or paying more attention on them. And then we have the third category, that will be the pastures that are under 40%. The pastures that when you walk through, you see a lot of weeds, you don't see much of the forage you were looking for. and you have that feeling that, yes, I got to do something with that pasture. And sometimes we don't have that feeling. I really like this drone picture here. This is from one of the fields I visited, and just walking through, I said, yeah, that's maybe a halfway pasture. I may be able to, recover this one from what I have. And then we flew the drone, and when the drone came back with the pictures, I was like, no way, I will get it done again. We need to recover everything and start from the beginning on this. So it puts me in three different line of thoughts. I think that's the main goal when you divide in more than 70, from 40 to 70 and below 40, is to help you to understand what is the plan for each of these pastures. So if I have more than 70% there, my main focus would be to try to save that pasture, right? So I want to work with herbicides. I will work with fertilizers, maybe include legumes, be very conscious about my management, and try to keep that pasture doing good and try to improve it a little bit. The second set of pastures are those that will be very, in between, in a situation that you don't feel like it is a good pasture, but you don't want to renovate that pasture. So on that one, we'll do everything that we just mentioned, herbicides, fertilizers, management, to try to make sure that we can keep that pasture. But that's the kind of pasture that requires you to overseed in the fall, right? I'm talking about in the fall because I'm in the middle of the fescue belt here. So if you are down south, adjust a little bit of what we're talking, what I'm saying today. In my mind, if you are in a cool season place, most of us here, it's this up middle south, we will need to overseed fescue or orchard grass in September, October to be able to get it back in a good situation. And my third category is the one that I really need to renovate. If I don't have a third of that pasture covered with the good pasture I'm looking for, the good forage I'm looking for, that's the pasture I'm going to target, and we'll need to talk about pasture renovation. But look, even in the good ones, we will need to work with fertilization, adding clovers, management, everything that we'll talk a little bit in these next 20 minutes. So understanding that you now have three different set of pastures, that you now have a game plan, right? You know what you're doing. I'm always advocating to that you need to have a plan. If we don't have a plan, we cannot play that game. So now we have a game. We know that a third, and a third will be my threshold here, and I need to identify this three big group of pastures. With that in mind, we will start with soil test. Soil test is going to help me to make decisions and what to apply where. Soil test will help me to save money because I'm not going to just throw 300 pounds of triple 19 there and pray for God that everything goes fine this year. That does not work. I need to know where you are lacking at, right? I need to know which pastures I need phosphorus, which pastures I need potassium. Most of them I will need nitrogen, but some of them I may need to correct the soil pH. And we don't want to go into renovation. We don't want to go into pasture recovery without knowing this information. Especially when we are talking about hayfields, and in a pasture scenario, the nutrient removal is not that bad. But in a hay scenario, I want to share some of the data we have with you. So here at the University of Tennessee, the Beef and Forage Center, we have a forage lab that we work with farmers across the state, and they send us samples from their hayfields for forage samples overall. And what we did was we back calculate from the samples we receive and we analyze in the lab and say, well, if I have that much in the forage that's arriving here in the lab, how much am I removing from each field, right? So what we realize is every time you bale a 4x5, 5x5 that has 800 pounds of forage there, you were also baling on that bale 14 pounds of nitrogen, 4 pounds of phosphorus, and 17 pounds of potassium. If you are in a situation that you are harvest 2.5 tons per acre, we are harvesting 90 pounds of nitrogen per acre and 24 of phosphorus and 105 of potassium. So again, we just rebuilt out of few hundred samples that we had in the lab to be able to back calculate and say that's your expected nutrients removal from your field based on the bale or in an acreage base. Why is this important? This is important to help us to identify how many dollars we need to bring back. So for every bale you sell, you got to spend another $15, $16 today just to buy NPK and replace that one you remove from there. If we are talking about an acre that you harvest 2.5 tons, I need $100 just to bring back those nutrients that you just sent out of the field. I'm not talking about spreading or broadcast it there. No, just to buy the nutrients we sent out. So if I am in a pasture situation or in a hayfield situation, it is really important to understand what I have there in terms of nutrients in the soil. And the only way I have to do this is to take a good soil sample. And I'm not talking about go there and just take a single core in the middle of the field. I'm talking about go there and understand the variability that you have in the field. Are you in a flat area that you can consider your 15 to 20 acre field as a sole field and say, yes, I'm going to take here field samples from this and I can consider? Or are you in the hills of Tennessee or North Carolina or Virginia, right? We have a bunch of hills around us here in the south, in the northern southeast. So if you are in a situation that you are in a hilly area, I rather to divide that area, that pasture, and consider at least the bottom and the hilltop. Or if it's a really hilly area, you can have hilltop, side slope, and bottom. And then we have 3 different samples, and we will consider your soil nutrition in 3 different ways. Because most likely, all the nutrients we have in the hilltop, over time, everything goes down, right? So your bottom pasture used to be richer, used to have higher soil fertility than what you have in the hilltop. And I don't want you under applying in the top and over apply in the bottom just because you put everything in the same soil sample. Let's work in this in a way that we can have your pasture divided in 2 or 3, depending on the slope you have, on the management you have been using. If it's a field that you just apply lime in half of it, you cannot take soil samples using all of them together, right? I will take half that I applied lime 2 years ago and the other half that I did not apply lime 2 years ago. So I can make decisions based on wherever are the difference we have in the soil. So take from 15 to 20 soil cores, put them together, and that will be one single composite sample that you send to the lab. 2 things that are important here. First is the depth. It needs to be done 0 to 6. So we'll incorporate all that root zone that the foragers are using in that pasture. And the second thing, it needs to be a clean bucket, okay? Sometimes we receive some samples in the lab that we ended up with numbers that we cannot explain. And I'm pretty sure that we are using that bucket that you use to distribute mineral to the cows. And that's going to contaminate your sample. Is not going to be good, the number that's going to pop up out of that thing. So what we recommend here is that you take like a cup and put in a Ziploc bag. Here in Tennessee, we have this small box that farmers can use, send to us. And with that, we have a soil test report. With that soil test report, I can handle a pasture that was in drought for the last 2 years. And now we can make a plan and say, yes, we have numbers. We know what we have there. And based on that, we will recover that pasture to do better next year. Also, I can use soil test reports to identify which pastures I'm going to work first based on the budget you have, right? Not all of us have budget enough to go and recover 3, 4, 5, 10 pastures every year, but you may need to pick 1 or 2 that you are going to do this. And based on the soil test report, I may be able to recover, a larger area using less money with fertilizers, because now I know which ones I need to apply what. So having the soil test and start to making these calculations and think about this, the first thing I want to pay attention is soil pH, okay? Soil pH tells me about the chemical environment in the soil, tells me what I need to do to improve that pH and bring it to levels that will help my plants to grow health. So liming a acidic pasture is a high priority in your farm. And I'll tell you why. right? I will show you why. So I really like this graph here that you can see all of these black bars there with the nutrients written on that. So if you look from left to right, from here to there, you see that those bars, they will have different colors, and they will change as we go from pH 4 to pH 10. Most of the soil samples we have in pastures in the Southeast US, they'll be here in the low fives. In the low fives, especially if you look here, phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, the three nutrients that we need the most, include the sulfur as well. You see that when we have pH close to 5, those lines are very thin. But as we move towards a higher pH, 6.5, we'll see that all of these bars will be a little bit thicker. What does it mean, Bruno? It means that the nutrients in the pH at 6.5, 7, they will be more plant available. The same nutrient that is in your soil, if your soil pH is 5, the availability is lower than if you have soil pH above 6. So why am I going to recover a pasture that I know that my pH is below 6, right? And that's the point. If I'm talking about fescue, Bermuda, crabgrass, orchard grass, most of the grasses we have in the Southeast US, you gotta have your soil pH between 6 and 7. Other than that, that plant is not growing as much as it's possible. If you're talking about legumes, alfalfa, or any other kind of legumes you have in mind, clovers, peanut, those plants, they need a little bit higher pH. So I would target a 6.5 pH or above if I would like to have a mixed pasture or a standalone legume pasture. And I like you to reflect with me a little bit here, because if you think that, based on your soil test, you need to apply 9, 30, 60 NP&K, and you're going to pay for them, right? And you say, yeah, I'm not going to apply lime. I'm fine with this. It's just 5.2. My pH is okay. Plants will do, fine. I know I'll lose a little bit, but that's fine. So let's put some numbers on this. If we assume that we are losing 30% of the nitrogen efficiency just because my soil pH is not right, we are losing like $18 per acre if you were applying 90 pounds per acre of nitrogen. I can lose up to 50% of the phosphorus there, and it means another $9. And we may do not lose a lot of potassium, but even if I assume 10%, it's another 2.46. So just because we decide not to correct the soil pH and take the chance to go with my NP&K without taking care of soil pH, I may be losing like $30 just because I'm not doing in the right way at the right time. So lime is very important. Soil pH is very important to be able to change whatever we have there in terms of soil pH, bring it up, and then I can bring nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And that's the second part of our conversation today. So first things first, soil pH, we'll take care of this. We'll make sure that everything is fine. If I have soil pH in the right way, and remember, lime, it takes time in the soil. We need, at least 3 months before renovate your pastures to make sure that that lime will work and change your soil pH. If you apply lime today and come back tomorrow to plant your desirable grass, you may not get the effect right away, and it's not going to be good. So let's take soil samples early in the spring, so you have time to decide which pasture you're going to renovate in the fall, so we have time to apply lime and get it on. Second thing would be P&K. If we don't have P&K in the soil, we'll be in trouble to grow plants as well. And this, you see, this is a really real soil sample here that we took from a pasture to show you guys today. My phosphorus levels there is low. My potassium level there is low. But here is a little bit different, right? pH, I just need to increase the numbers. I will go with wherever the soil tests tell me in terms of applying lime to raise my soil pH. When we are discussing P&K, yes, I want to apply them. I want to make sure that my plants will grow. But those are two of the most expensive ones, right? It's not like lime that costs like $25, $30 a ton. Here we're talking about a few $100s. So Here, I want to apply P&K in the pastures that have lower soil test levels, because those are the ones that I will have a good likelihood of yield and economic response. What we know is the lower is your soil test level, the higher is the probability of a profitable response. I don't want you guys applying P&K in pastures that are already in the medium levels or close to the higher levels, because it is enough to the plants to get there. But the pasture that we are low, especially if you are in a renovation scenario, if you're going to replant that pasture next fall, if you have low soil P and low soil K, especially in the P side of it, we will not have the amount of tillers we need. We know that P is highly connected with everything in the plant in terms of energy to grow, energy to have a new tiller, energy to go through photosynthesis process. So you gotta have the phosphorus you need. And I know, especially in P&K, in some states of some regions of the Southeast, we have high levels, and that's fine. But since I hit the ground here in Tennessee, especially in the potassium side of it, I got from several producers that, no, potassium is okay. We never work in potassium. Potassium is fine. Potassium may not be fine. I got several of my soil test reports here showing me that potassium was below the levels, and that was the reason we have some yellowish in the plants, not because of the lack of nitrogen. So take the soil test, figure out what you have. At least here from our lab at the University of Tennessee, at the end of the very bottom of the soil test report, you have the recommendation if you are just in a maintenance situation or if you are in a pasture renovation situation that you need to add a little bit, to make sure that everything is going to be in the right way. So soil is my first step when we are talking about renovation. I want to go through the second step here, which is the seed. Why we are talking about seed? Because most of us, we go, we know seed recommendations. We have been planting these for a while. In Tennessee here, we have what we call forage and field crop seeding guide for Tennessee. We update this thing every few years. And there you have range, right? Fescue can go from 15 to 20, orchard grass from 10 to 15. So it's important to have the right seeding rate. And it's important when you're buying seeds that you pay attention that these recommendations that we are talking here, they are in pure live seeds. Bruno, what is this? Well, when you buy a bag of seeds, inside that bag of seeds, you have the germination percentage, the pure seed percentage, and all the crop seeds there, weed seeds, inert material, hard seed. We are not buying only forage seeds when we buy a bag of forage seeds. There are other stuff that comes with it. So I brought to you guys two different labels. The first one is, both then are Kentucky 31. The first one has 98% germination rate and 85%, 98% pure seeds and 85% germination rate. If I'm going to go with the 15 pounds per acre in pure live seeds, which is the recommendation that we have here for the state of Tennessee, I would need to buy 18 pounds per acre that I'm going to recover, right? So pretty straightforward. The recommendation divided by pure seeds and germination, it gives me 18. And then you say, Bruno, you see, that didn't change much. That's the reason when we talk about 15 and 20, you buy you buy that and you spread there. Fine. What if you have, gosh, I lost my slide. What if you have something that the germination or the pure seed is not that big? So you can have numbers that will be higher than this. Or if you have coated seed, for example, where the inert material here will not be 1.5, but maybe 40%. So this number can go up to 30, 35, 36 pounds per acre. So it's very important to check the label and see what you have there in terms of pure seed, germination, and inert material to identify how many pounds of pure live seeds you need per acre. So why do I like the range? We talk about the importance of check the label, calculate how many pounds of pure live seeds you have it. And if I use the same example, we will go from 18 to 24. if I'm considering 15 to 20 pure pounds of pure live seeds. So it helps me to go to the field, to calibrate my drill, and be able to adjust it based on the range I want to hit there. And the question is, when do I go with more towards the lower level or the higher end of the seeding rate? I like to consider all these things you have in the field, right? What is the seed bed? What is your weed pressure? How good is your soil fertility? What is the weather? What is your forecast? Do you have grain in the forecast or you don't? So if everything is toward the bad side of it, I will push to more seeds. I may go with 24 pounds and be able to get here more close to my 20 pounds of pure live seeds. If everything's fine, you did everything right, fine. You can save a little bit of money in the seed side of it, and then we will make sure that everything is fine. But you need to make this call when you get to the field. The second point here on the seed side of it is depth. Why is depth important? Because seeds can have different size, right? So here I have for you teff grass, tall fescue, worship grass, annual ryegrass, sorghum, and corn. And you see, if they have different size, they have different amount of energy in them, in each of these seeds, and the power that each of these seeds has to make through that depth that you were putting in there will be very important to identify the viability of those seeds when they pop out. And that's the reason when you have small seeds like Bermuda, like teff, like clover, we can go just, a quarter of an inch dip. You cannot go much more than this. But if you have corn, if you plant wheat, if you plant eastern grama grass, you may bury that thing at 1 inch down and they will pop up because they have energy. They have the ability to make through and pop up. So soil test, keep the eyes in your seed and make sure that everything is okay to be able to get in the final scenario here where we are going to get your stand evaluation, understand what you were doing, and make decisions on this, right? If you're going for a non-till renovation, if you are in that situation that we need to renew the pastures, that will be my first scenario for you. When is that? When did you realize it? Is it in the fall already? You're already into this? We still have time to go with maybe spring goats just to make sure that that pasture is not on bare ground during the fall time? Or is it more later on? You already are in the spring and you realize it. So you can go with summer animals just to make sure that you have something to feed your animals. And then on the next fall, you are going to make decisions. Always consider taking soil sample. Always consider to kill whatever you have there 10 to 14 days prior to planting. For me here, mid-September is my goal to drill seeds in. So early September, I will round up everything, burn it down to be able to plant my seeds in September. I will keep my eyes on the weeds, especially from December to March to kill cool season plants, cool season weeds. From after the first cut next year and during the summertime next year, if I'm planting this fall, I'm going to be checking on cool season weeds. So overall, folks, that will be my message to you guys. Stand evaluation, soil test, keep your eyes in your seed quality, what you're buying. Each bag of seed is different. And I always like to say that if you can save a Ziploc bag of seeds, sometimes you guys call us like 8 months later and say, Bruno, my pasture didn't came as I thought it would. What can we do? If you don't save any seeds, we cannot help you to identify what it was, right? Good seed bed, weed control, management to ensure that we have long life for these stems. So, Dr. Silva, that was my message for today. We may still have a minute here to go through questions. I think I talk more than I should today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bruno, for a great presentation. Let's thank our speaker, everyone, here for a minute. So, Dr. Pedreira, just before we open for questions, I saw that Sean Bird shared a comment on the chat about the silvopasture. So the comment was that if a producer is involved with USDA programs and is looking to convert a forest land to silvopasture, it's a good idea for them to get an updated wetland, highly erodible land determination to indicate the changing land use to make sure they are still compliant with the program. Thank you so much, Chad, for this comment. It's definitely important. So now we would like to open for questions that anybody may have. If you'd like to unmute yourself, now it's a good time for you to do that. And then I'll just ask one thing because I see probably a lot of people have to leave to other meetings now. But Dr. Pedreira, you have some firsthand experience with this aftermath after some extreme events that you all had there last year, especially. So just maybe one or two thoughts that you may have, just to share with your practical experience, like on the case of aftermath. What is something important that the producers or the agents that could be helping the producers would need to know on what to do?
Thanks, Liliane. I think it's important to understand what is exactly the scenario you were talking about, right? I was very focused today here on the drought situation where everything is still in good place there. We just need to recover these pastures. But for example, if I can show you what happened here after Hurricane Helene last year, right? We got that bunch of rain in September. And after the hurricane, we have scenarios like this. We couldn't even get into the area for 6 months. And now we are trying to recover them. And that's what I have in the areas that we have a lot of sandy. And this is what I have in the areas where I have more than silty sediments. So what are we really talking about? I think that's the main thing. Am I talking about a sandy deposit that is there, a silty deposit, or is just after a drought? Drought is the easiest is the easiest scenario to recover from, right? But I would pay a visit. I would understand what is the scenario. And based on what you have there, we'll need to discuss and identify the way to go. But good seed and good soil test will always be helpful, right? That was the reason I was very concentrated on those two things today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I don't see any questions on the chat, and we already wrap up the time that we had reserved for this webinar today. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Pereira, for this great presentation. I just shared a link for a Qualtrics survey on the chat. If the participants could help us answering that survey, that would be great. And so we're wrapping up the session today. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. And I hope you learned and enjoyed this event today, and that you also plan to join us next week on Tuesday and Thursday, which we'll be sharing some USDA and NRCS resources on Tuesday, and then having a roundtable with some of the speakers that will be participating on the sessions on Thursday next week. Thank you, everyone. I really thank you for joining us today, and I hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.